Welcome to this deep dive, and today we're doing something a little different.
Oh,
Yeah, we're going to be taking a look at some character profiles that
Okay.
were created for an erotic romance novel.
interesting.
It's not every day you get to kind of peek behind the curtain
Right.
and see how a novelist, especially one writing in the genre, um, brings their characters to life.
Yeah, it's like we're getting a glimpse
Yeah.
into the author's workshop, you know,
Yeah.
seeing the raw clay before it's molded into the finished sculpture.
Exactly. Our source material is a PDF simply titled Default Title, dated January 3rd.
Okay.
It contains character profiles for what the author envisions as a 100,000-word novel.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. The actual word count is currently much lower,
Oh,
sitting at 85,379.5.
interesting.
What do you make of that?
Well, that discrepancy is definitely intriguing. It could indicate a few things.
Yeah.
Perhaps the author is finding it challenging to flesh out the story to their intended length.
Hmm.
Or maybe they're deliberately aiming for a tighter, more focused narrative.
Okay.
It begs the question, what might the author be prioritizing as they develop this story?
That's a great question. And to answer it, let's dive into the characters themselves.
Okay.
First up, we have Isabella, our protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
She's a successful erotic novelist,
Wow.
which is fascinating in itself, given that her writing is a direct rebellion against her strict religious upbringing.
That's a powerful internal conflict right from the start.
Yeah.
On one hand, she's achieving recognition and pushing boundaries with her writing, but on the other hand, she's carrying this fear of judgment,
Right.
especially from her family.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much her past is shaping her present,
Right.
even as she tries to break free from it.
And that's not her only fear.
Right.
The profile also mentions she's terrified of losing her creative freedom.
Oh, wow.
It's like she's walking a tightrope between self-expression and the expectations of others.
Absolutely. That tension between personal desire and societal pressure is often what makes a character relatable.
Yeah.
We all feel that pull between who we are and who the world expects us to be.
Right.
Imagine yourself in Isabella's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
How would you navigate those conflicting forces?
It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to Ethan, a world-renowned erotic photographer.
Okay.
His work, much like Isabella's writing, pushes boundaries and challenges conventions.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just seeking artistic recognition, though.
Right.
He craves authentic connection, something deeper than the superficiality often associated with his field.
And yet he's battling these fears
Yeah.
that speak to the very nature of his art. He's afraid of losing his vision, of
Yeah.
his beauty fading. Given what he does, those fears are almost existential, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's almost like his profession forces him to confront the fleeting nature of beauty, something we all grapple with on
Yeah.
some level. It makes you wonder if his art is a way to capture and preserve those fleeting moments, or if it's something else entirely.
Perhaps it's a bit of both.
Right.
It raises the question, is Ethan seeking to control beauty through his art, or is he trying to make peace with its impermanence?
Interesting.
Yeah,
And we can't overlook the connection between Ethan and Isabella,
right.
described as muse and collaborative partner.
Yo.
It seems their artistic sensibilities are intertwined.
And that dynamic could be very telling.
Yeah.
Are they drawn to each other because they see reflections of themselves in the other's work?
Mm-hmm.
Are they pushing each other creatively or enabling each other's fears?
Those are great questions, but hold on, because things are about to get a lot more complicated.
Oh.
We have Mia entering the scene, an erotic dancer who uses her body as a form of self-expression after overcoming a traumatic past.
That's a powerful example of how art can be used for healing and empowerment.
Yeah.
Think about it. She's reclaiming her body and her narrative through dance. It's a bold statement, especially considering the vulnerability inherent in her chosen art form.
And it makes her fears all the more poignant.
Right.
She's afraid of judgment for her past,
Hmm.
of losing control. It's like she's constantly navigating this tension between reclaiming her power and protecting her vulnerability.
Precisely. And it makes you wonder how the author will use Mia's story to explore these themes of healing self-acceptance and the courage it takes to put yourself out there, both literally and figuratively.
But here's where the story takes a really interesting turn.
Okay.
The document states that Mia and Isabella share a past,
Oh.
a forbidden love affair
Yeah.
that ended in heartbreak.
Now that adds another layer of complexity to the narrative.
Yeah.
What was it about their love that was forbidden? How did that experience shape who they are today? And how will that past relationship impact their current interactions, especially with Ethan now in the mix?
So many questions, and we haven't even gotten to Oliver yet.
Oh, right.
He's described as a successful businessman and art collector, fascinated by exploring intimacy through erotic art.
Interesting.
But he's driven by a desire for power and control,
Okay.
seeking unique experiences that feed his need to dominate.
His character seems to represent a darker side of the art world,
Wow.
where beauty and intimacy are commodified and controlled.
Mhm.
And his fears, losing his physical prowess ending up alone, suggest a deep-seated insecurity lurking beneath that veneer of power.
It's almost like he's using art and sexuality as a way to compensate for those fears, wouldn't you say?
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah.
And it creates an intriguing contrast with the other characters who, despite their own struggles, seem to be seeking something more genuine and meaningful through their art.
And here's another twist. Oliver and Ethan have a history of tumultuous romance that ended badly.
So we have a tangled web of past relationships
Yeah.
connecting all of our main characters.
Exactly.
This author isn't shying away from creating a complex emotional landscape.
Not at all. We have Isabella and Ethan drawn to each other creatively and potentially romantically.
Right.
We have Isabella and Mia sharing this intense forbidden past. And then we have Ethan and Oliver with their own unresolved romantic history.
It's a recipe for some serious drama,
Right.
and it speaks to the author's intention to explore the messy, complicated nature of human relationships, particularly within the context of art and desire.
So what does all of this tell us about the author's creative process? What insights can we glean from these intertwined character profiles?
Well, for one, it suggests a willingness to delve into complex psychological themes.
Uh-huh.
These characters aren't just defined by their sexual desires.
Right.
They're driven by fears, past traumas, and a longing for something more than superficial connections.
It's like the author is using the framework of erotic romance to explore deeper truths about human nature,
Yeah.
about the ways we see connection, its validation and meaning in our lives.
Exactly. And that's what makes these profiles so fascinating to unpack.
Right.
They offer a glimpse into the author's mind, into the themes and ideas they're grappling with as they craft this story.
So with all these complex characters and their tangled relationships, where do you think the story might go from here? What narrative choices might the author be considering?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And I think the answer lies not just in the individual characters, but in the ways their lives intersect and collide.
Okay, let's pause here for a moment and let that sink in for our listeners. When we come back, we'll delve deeper into those intersections and explore the potential for conflict growth and maybe even redemption for these characters.
It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, you know?
Yeah.
But instead of shapes, we're working with emotions, desires, and past experiences.
Right.
Each piece connects to another, creating a complex and fascinating picture.
It really does feel that way.
Yeah.
And as we dig deeper into those connections, it becomes clear that the author is setting the stage for some potentially explosive conflicts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's start with Isabella and Ethan.
Okay.
On the surface, they seem like a perfect match. Two artists, both pushing boundaries, both yearning for authentic connection.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're drawn to each other's creative fire.
But you have to wonder, will that fire burn too brightly?
Right.
Will their shared ambition and drive ultimately lead to conflict? And how will Mia's presence impact their dynamic?
Right.
After all, she represents a part of Isabella's past that's still shrouded in secrecy and heartbreak.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Imagine yourself as Ethan, drawn to this captivating woman who also happens to be your muse. Then suddenly a figure from her past emerges,
Right.
someone who clearly had a deep impact on her.
Yeah.
How would you react?
Right.
Would you feel threatened, curious,
Yeah.
perhaps a bit of both?
It's easy to see how that situation could breed insecurity and jealousy.
Absolutely.
And then we have Oliver lurking in the background,
Right.
carrying his own baggage from his past relationship with Ethan. Knowing his controlling nature, it's hard to imagine him simply stepping aside and letting Ethan and Isabella explore their connection without interference.
He strikes me as someone who collects not just art,
Yeah.
but experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and perhaps even people.
Right.
It wouldn't be surprising if he saw Isabella as another acquisition, another piece to add to his collection.
Especially considering his history with Ethan.
Right.
What happens when his desire for possession clashes with Isabella's need for creative freedom
Mm-hmm.
and Ethan's longing for authenticity?
It's a recipe for disaster, really.
Yeah.
And it speaks to a larger theme that the author might be exploring.
Okay.
The tension between control and vulnerability in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Each of these characters is grappling with those forces in their own way.
It's like they're all trying to find a balance between letting go and holding on.
Yeah,
Between expressing themselves freely and protecting their hearts.
exactly. And the way they navigate those tensions will likely determine the course of the story. Will they succumb to their fears and insecurities, or will they find the courage to embrace vulnerability and forge genuine connections?
It's interesting, though, that the document mentions Mia has a current boyfriend,
Oh, okay.
Oscar, who's supportive and helping her heal.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know much about him,
Right.
but his presence adds another layer to this already complex web of relationships.
It makes you wonder what role he'll play in the story.
Yeah.
Will he be a stabilizing force for Mia,
Mm.
a symbol of her newfound stability? Or will his presence create further complications, perhaps even triggering jealousy or possessiveness in others?
And let's not forget the elephant in the room,
Right.
the erotic element.
Okay.
It's central to this story,
Yeah.
not just as a titillating detail, but as a way for these characters to explore their desires,
Mm-hmm.
fears, and vulnerabilities.
That's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just looking at characters who happen to be involved in the world of erotic art and performance. We're seeing how their sexuality is intertwined with their personal journeys,
Right.
their artistic expression,
Mm-hmm.
and their relationships with each other.
Take Isabella, for example.
Okay.
Her erotic writing isn't just a career choice.
Right.
It's a form of rebellion against her upbringing, a way for her to reclaim her sexuality and define it on her own terms.
But it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
is she truly comfortable with those choices?
Right.
Or is she still battling internalized shame and guilt?
Mm-hmm.
How much of her writing is driven by genuine desire versus a need to defy her past?
And then you have Ethan seeking authentic connection,
Right.
but perhaps searching for it in the wrong places.
Yeah.
Fleeting encounters rather than deeper, more meaningful relationships.
Okay.
His photography, while technically brilliant, might be masking a deeper longing for vulnerability and intimacy.
It's almost like he's capturing the beauty of the body,
Yeah.
but neglecting the soul.
Right.
His journey might involve learning to see beyond the surface to connect with his subjects on a deeper level, both in his art and in his personal life.
And Mia, using dance as a form of healing and empowerment after trauma.
Yeah.
You have to admire her strength and resilience.
Right.
But how does that experience shape her approach to intimacy? Is sex for her a way to reclaim her body and redefine it as a source of pleasure rather than pain?
That's a powerful question.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the complexity of her character.
Right.
She's not simply a survivor. She's a woman reclaiming her agency, exploring her desires, and navigating the complexities of love and intimacy after experiencing profound hurt.
And then there's Oliver, who seems to view sex as a means to exert power and control.
Yeah.
To experience every sensation, but not necessarily to forge genuine connections.
Right.
His approach to intimacy is almost transactional, driven by a need to dominate rather than to connect.
It's a stark contrast to the other characters who, despite their flaws, seem to be searching for something more authentic and meaningful in their relationships. Oliver's journey might involve confronting his own insecurities and learning to let go of control, allowing himself to be vulnerable and experience true intimacy.
It's fascinating to see how the author has woven these different approaches to sex and intimacy into the very fabric of the story.
Yeah.
It's not just a backdrop. It's a driving force that shapes the characters' choices, motivations,
Right.
and ultimately their destinies.
And it brings us back to that initial question.
Yeah.
What is the author trying to achieve with this story?
Right.
Are they simply aiming to titillate, or are they using the framework of erotic romance to explore deeper truths about human nature, about the ways we seek connection, validation, and meaning in our lives?
Based on what we've seen so far, I'd say it's definitely the latter.
I agree.
These character profiles suggest a story that's both sensual and thought-provoking.
Yeah.
A story that delves into the complexities of desire, the power of art,
Right.
and the search for authenticity in a world that often prizes superficiality.
And it's a story that's ripe with potential for conflict growth and perhaps even redemption for these characters.
Right.
But how that potential will be realized Well, that remains to be seen.
It's like we're standing at the edge of a forest, knowing there are paths that lead to both darkness and light.
Mm.
The question is, which path will each character choose?
Right.
And will they find what they're searching for along the way?
That's the beauty of this stage of the creative process.
Yeah.
We can speculate, we can analyze,
Right.
but ultimately the author holds the map.
Mm-hmm.
They'll decide where the story goes from here.
Okay, let's take another pause here. When we come back, we'll shift our focus from the characters themselves to the broader themes and narrative choices that the author might be considering. It's amazing how much we can glean from just a few pages of character profiles. It's like the author has given us a key to unlock a whole world of possibilities.
And that's the magic of good storytelling, isn't it? It sparks our imaginations
Yeah,
and invites us to become active participants in the creative process.
absolutely. As we've discussed, these characters are complex, flawed, and driven by a mix of desires and fears.
Right.
But beyond the individual personalities, there are some intriguing thematic threads woven throughout these profiles.
One of the most prominent themes is this idea of art as a form of rebellion, a way to break free from societal expectations and forge your own path. We see it most clearly in Isabella's journey,
Right.
but it also resonates with Ethan and Mia, who are both challenging conventions and pushing boundaries through their respective art forms.
Think about it. Isabella is using erotic literature to defy her strict religious upbringing. Ethan is exploring intimacy and desire through photography, potentially confronting societal taboos in the process. And Mia is reclaiming her body and her sexuality through dance, a powerful act of defiance after experiencing trauma.
It makes you wonder how the author will use their art to navigate those societal pressures. Will they find acceptance and validation, or will they face backlash and resistance?
And how will their art impact their personal relationships? Will it be a source of connection and understanding, or will it create conflict and tension?
Those are great questions. And it speaks to another key theme that emerges from these profiles, the search for authenticity in a world that often prizes superficiality. Each of these characters is grappling with that tension in their own way.
Right? Isabella is torn between her desire for recognition and her fear of judgment.
Hmm.
Ethan is seeking genuine connection, but might be looking for it in the wrong places. And Mia is trying to reconcile her past trauma with her present desires, seeking to define herself on her own terms.
It's a universal struggle, really. We all want to be seen and accepted for who we truly are,
Yeah.
but we also fear rejection and vulnerability. It'll be interesting to see how the author navigates that tension in the story.
And then there's the theme of healing and transformation, which is particularly poignant in Mia's story.
Mm-hmm.
Her journey is a testament to the power of art to help us process trauma, reclaim our bodies, and find strength and resilience in the face of adversity.
It makes you wonder if the author will explore those themes in the other characters' journeys as well. Could Ethan find healing through his photography, confronting his fears and insecurities in the process? Could Isabella find liberation through her writing, shedding the weight of her past and embracing her true self?
And what about Oliver? Could he experience a transformation, shedding his need for control and embracing vulnerability and genuine connection?
It's certainly a possibility, though. It might be the most challenging journey of all, given his deeply ingrained patterns of behavior. But that's what makes his character so intriguing. He represents a potential for redemption, a chance to break free from the confines of his past and find true fulfillment.
So with all these themes in play, what kind of narrative choices might the author be considering?
Well, given the word count discrepancy we discussed earlier, it seems the author might be focusing on a specific aspect of these characters' lives rather than trying to encompass everything. Perhaps they'll prioritize the development of a particular relationship or explore a specific theme in greater depth.
It's also worth noting that the document specifically mentions a forbidden love affair between Isabella and Mia. That suggests a backstory ripe with secrets, betrayals, and unresolved emotions. It could be a driving force in the narrative, impacting their present relationships and choices.
And let's not forget the inherent drama of the love polygon the author has created. With all these intertwined relationships and conflicting desires, the potential for conflict and heartbreak is immense.
It's like the author set a fire, and now we're watching to see which way the flames will spread. Will they consume the characters, or will they forge something new and beautiful from the ashes?
That's the question we're left pondering, isn't it? And that's the power of this glimpse into the creative process. It allows us to engage with the story on a deeper level, to speculate, analyze, and ultimately to anticipate what might unfold.
Yes. So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought-provoking question. Given everything we've discussed, what do you think the author's ultimate intention is with this story?
Are they simply seeking to entertain, or are they aiming for something more profound, something that resonates with the reader long after they've finished the last page?
And what message, if any, do you think they're trying to convey about art desire and the search for authenticity in a world that often feels superficial and fleeting?
We encourage you to ponder those questions as you imagine your own version of this story. After all, that's the beauty of art. It sparks our imaginations and invites us to create alongside the artist.
Thanks for joining us on this unique exploration into the world of erotic romance. We hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the genre and the creative process behind it.
And perhaps it's even inspired you to explore your own creative impulses. Remember, everyone has a story to tell. Sometimes it just takes a little spark to ignite the flame.